All right, what's going on, everybody? This is Alex once again with another episode of the EOT Newsflash. This is episode 73. There's something in the water in Kobe, and I want to taste. Nothing's really happening in Magic right now. There's not a lot of news. Commander Anthology came out today, if you're into that kind of thing. People are still kind of pissed off about the whole 1v1 Commander online leagues, which are basically you play Baral or lose, which is kind of interesting. We've seen Dig Through Time and Treasure Cruise and Strip Mine be banned in that format, so that's news, I guess. Talk amongst yourselves about what you think about that. But what we did have this weekend was a whole bunch of Modern get played, which is, of course, my favorite format. We had two Grand Prix, one in Kobe and one in Copenhagen. We also had two events over in Baltimore, both an SCG Open and, of course, the SCG Classic. So I kind of want to talk about those for today's episode. Bit of a shorter show, obviously, schedules as they are. I am not, joined by any co-host, so this is me getting to ramble about Modern, and that's sweet. So let's look at Baltimore first. Let's go ahead and pull up on the screen. For whatever reason, MTG Top 8 does not have the actual open results, but Brad Nelson won that with Death Shadow in a pretty sweet finals match against his Dredge opponent. They almost had to give Brad several slow play warnings because if you've ever watched him play, he's a very methodic player. It was constantly... You could tell he was going through every permutation of every single action he was going to take, and when it was time for him to end the game, he did it. Like it was a pretty great 3-game set. So you go check it out in the archives. If you've considered playing Death Shadow or you are playing Death Shadow, want some tips and some tricks. Watching somebody who has truly, I would say, mastered that deck. Never a bad idea to hone your skills. But I do want to turn attention over to the Baltimore Classic, and in particular, the two top decks. We've got blue-white control and 4-color control, and particularly Jonathan Sekenic. I don't know if this kid is a pro of any sort, but whenever he shows up, he just shows me that I can still play control in Modern. And I know that blue-white control has been kind of on the uprise, but this just makes my heart sing. I mean, 3 Snapcaster Mage. Censor is making its way into Modern. How great is that? We get to see a Johnny Vengeant, which makes this actually a Jeskai deck, but it's the only red card in the deck other than the sideboard, which has Lightning Helix and Zetacaster in it. So, and then Wear Tear. So that's actually kind of neat. So it's like a little splash there. Excellent. Maybe there's room for Blood Moon? I don't know. But yeah, I just have to give a shout out to Sekenic here. He just shows up and wrecks a tournament with control. You can go back and look at all of his decks over on Star City Games, where there's actually a full collection of every player's top finish, and a majority of his are some kind of control build, whether it's Cobblade back in the day, fairies, bans of some sort of control. This kid knows what's up. So let's turn our attention now we'll go to Copenhagen first. And nothing really out of the ordinary is going on here. We have Death Shadow, of course, showing up. And that's really kind of cool to see all the different permutations and flavors that Death Shadow's taken over the past couple of weeks. We first saw it come out as Abzan, the black, white, green version of it, featuring the package of Transverse the Uvenwald, Liliana, The Last Hope, really powering up the graveyard so you can get out a fast Delirium and then be able to enable your Transverses to go and get your Death Shadows, your Tassigurs, and things like that. But now we're seeing it evolve into Grixis and 4 and 5 color builds. And it's really interesting to see that nobody's really come to a consensus about which version is best. If I had to pick one myself, I'd say it's probably this Grixis version, simply because it has the power of things like Kolaghan's Command, Snapcaster Mage, and Tassigur, all being powered by Thought Scour. I think that's a really powerful combination there, and just adding Death Shadow to the mix, which typically this used to be a pseudo Delver shell. But as it stands, Death Shadow does a better impersonation of a Delver in Modern than I think Delver actually ever did. Controversial? Maybe, but I think that's the truth here. Just being able to do damage to yourself, utilizing Street Wraith, utilizing Thoughtseize, and just the natural ebb and flow of your life total going down as you power up these early Tassigurs and Gurmag Anglers and then back up with Snapcaster Mages, all of a sudden, there's a Death Shadow and the game's just over. I think that's fantastic. So I really like these builds. Again, I said there are 4 and 5 color builds, that feature, the more Jund aspects featuring cards, like Timber Battle Rage backed up by Lingering Souls and the usual creature package there. So that's actually really cool, and I do like those a lot. That's all fine and good. And, if this deck continues to do well, I think I'm okay with that because it's a very skill-intensive deck, and I know that there's already some people who are clamoring for a ban. I don't know what you ban here, though. Probably Death Shadow. Maybe. I don't know. But I don't think that's a problematic card. I don't think that's problematic at all. Now, if it starts showing up in massive numbers, and to be fair, I'm looking at the drop down here on Copenhagen. We have it in first place. We have it in let's see, it's sixth place, and then there are 1, 2, 3 more in the top 16. So it's a little bit worrying. Obviously, this isn't to the numbers that we've seen prior. If we look at the actual breakdown, like let's look at the last 2 weeks of Modern, and it's holding a pretty solid hold on the metagame at 15%. That's pretty high, actually, as opposed to its two closest competitors, Eldrazi Aggro and Creatures Toolbox, which are the Collected Company core decks, holding a pretty sizable 10%. And to me, that's a healthy metagame. Something has to be on top. Something has to have a target on the back of its head, and I think that's okay. And that's really given rise to cards like Blessed Alliance out of these blue-white control decks, just kind of showing us this is how we can attack this Death Shadows deck, and it's giving surprisingly the rise to different decks, and that's always great when a new challenger emerges as the top dog in a format, and the rest of the format rises up and says, "Hey, we can hang, we can beat you." I think that's really exciting. So I'm curious to see what happens, the further we go into this, Modern season, especially with the PPTQ season coming up for Modern, if, Death Shadow really stays on top and what we can do about it. I know I'm not going to play it, although Prixs' Death Shadow? I mean, if you guys watched my box opening for Modern Masters 2017, I cracked a foil one, so maybe. Just maybe. But let's turn our attention to Kobe. And I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to give you guys the full box here. We're cutting off the bottom deck here, so let me adjust that for you guys really quick. Of course, if you're watching this over on YouTube, appreciate that. If you're listening to this over on the MTG cast, you're going to miss out on little things on the screen, but I think you can follow along pretty well with me. So in first place is Joe So, who has probably the most generic sounding name ever, but that's beside the point. No harsh, no harsh on his name or anything like that. He won a GP for crying out loud. What did you do this weekend? So this looks like, from just the mana base alone, Quetzalcoatls, Concealed Courtyards, Temple, Fetid Heath, Mutavault, this looks like a black-white Eldrazi Death and Taxes list that plays cards like Tidehauler Sculler, Wasteland Strangler, the usual, Smashers and Thought-Knot Seers, usually backed up by Thalia, Leonin Relic Warder, Leonin Arbiter, and has a really heavy mana denial package, and usually backed up by Aether Vials and Ghost Quarters and things like that. This deck is a little bit different, though, and I am really scratching my head as to just how the heck he did this, because this is a complicated deck, if anything. So let's look at the creature package here. We have 3 Already Smasher, 1 Shriekmaw, 4 Thought-Knot Seer, 4 Tidehauler Sculler, and 4 Wasteland Strangler. Pretty typical. Maybe we're just not going as far into the Hate Bear, the Death and Taxes usual builds of Thalias and Leonin Arbiters. But let's go further into the deck. We have 1 Collective Brutality, 1 Dismember, 2 Fatal Push, 3 Inquisition of Kozilek, 4 Lingering Souls, 4 Path to Exile, 1 Thoughtseize, 1 Ratchet Bomb, and 4 Relic of Progenitus to power those Tidehauler Skull, or the Wasteland Stranglers, I'm sorry. There's just something not quite right here. It's like they took the black-white Eldrazi, the Eldrazi, like Tron decks, or the Abant Eldrazi decks, and the black-white Death and Taxes decks that Modern are usually known for, and kind of smushed them together and didn't take all the good pieces from either deck and put them all together. I don't know. This just seems really strange. There's no expedition maps to go and fetch out your mana accelerators. You only have the 4 Eldrazi Temple to really power out a solid, turn 2 Thought-Knots here, which this deck probably can do never, maybe 10% of the time. I don't know. We've seen similar decks to this, like Black-Red Eldrazi, which are playing a little bit more of a control game, but this deck just looks to be a pure mid-range shell, and I don't quite get it, to be completely honest. Even the sideboard, Busted Alliance, Cast Out, which is seeing a considerable amount of Modern play right now, which I think is great. Disenchant, Fulminator Mage, Cletus Trader and Get, Stony Silence, Surgical Extraction, and Thoughtseize. This just looks like a black-white mid-range deck, and I don't know if that's good enough to compete against a lot of these other decks out there. I just don't know. Tidehauler Sculler, Still a very good disruptive card, as are the Thought Seizes and the Inquisitions, but when you combine it with Thought Nazi, Reality Smasher, and Wasteland Strangler, I don't know if that's a good enough shell to really power this deck out. Obviously, it was. It won a whole Grand Prix, but I don't know. I'm really confused about this deck. I would love to see it in action. Maybe I'm missing something here. Maybe it is just super resilient. I don't know. That's all I'm going to say about that. In second place, we have Dredge. Nothing fancy here. In third place, we have Death Shadow, this being the Grixis variant. Again, this is kind of the build that I think I might go with if I were to play a Death Shadows deck. And I think these decks are really cool, actually. We have Eldrazi in fourth place. Nothing fancy here. I like Eldrazi a whole lot. I do like the fact that he's playing Emrakul, the Promised End. I've considered putting a copy of that in my build, but something about getting that 13 mana down, I don't know. There's a lot of aggressive decks in my metagame right now in my local shop. Maybe. I don't know. But Ugin in the sideboard? Sick. We have Ad Nauseam in fifth place. Fifth place. Again, nothing fancy here. We have Affinity here in sixth place. And again, these are... Hold on. Let me look at this mana base real quick, guys. Spire of Industry, Snow-Covered Island, Seagate Wreckage, Inventor's Fair? Huh. Something's going on here. This is different. Creatures are the same. Arcbound Ravager, Master of Ethereum, Collected... This guy's playing Collected Company and Affinity. What is going on? I don't understand this. This was brought to my attention. Wedge over at the Mana Source on YouTube. If you check him out, great content there. Did a breakdown of some of the decks over the weekend, and this was brought to my attention. And I had to shoot it out to all my friends. I'm like, guys, check this out. You know, Stephen James, the whole crew is like, what is going on here, and why is Collected Company being played in Affinity? They couldn't come up with anything. I can't come up with anything. But you just know how many people did he catch off guard just passing the turn after attacking, holding up mana, and he's like, all right, at the end of your turn, Collected Company. But then you hit like Mutavault and Ornithopter, or not Mutavault, but Ornithopter and Memnite. And then it looks really embarrassing. But maybe there's something to this. I don't know. I just don't know. But it sure is goofy. Next, we have in seventh place, we've got a blue-white X, and it is Esper. Esper mid-range deck. And again, the question marks just keep popping up here. So let's take a look at this deck. Celestial Colonnade as a 1-of. Shambling Vent is your 3-of. And there is no Creeping Tar Pit in this Esper deck. First red flag of what's going on. Maybe they're trying to, not rely on the fact that Celestial Colonnade takes 5 freaking mana to power up in a 23 land deck. Maybe, I don't know. Let's look at the creature package, though. 1 Tassiker, makes sense. 4 Snapcaster Mage, of course. 4 Glorybound Initiate. Yeah, that's the 3-1 Exert guy from Amonkhet, that when you exert it, you can exert it and give it +1/+3 and lifelink till the end of turn. Okay. But maybe there's something we can explain a little bit more here in the rest of the deck. We have 3 Collective Brutality, 2 Cryptic Command, 1 Devour Flesh, 3 Fatal Push, 2 Lingering Souls, 2 Mana Leak, 4 Painful Truth, 2 Path to Exile, 4 Serum Vision, 2 Spell Snare, 2 Thoughtseize, and a Batter Skull. Yeah, Batter Skull. So I really don't know what's going on here. If I were to play a deck like this, I would want to have as many counter spells and cheap removal spells as I could to make sure that when I do exert my Glorybound Initiate, that I'm not going to get punished on the backswing. Because yeah, 4 life is nothing to scoff at, but I don't think that's enough here. Maybe if I was playing the full complement of 4 Path to Exile, multiple Fatal Push, maybe some Vapor Snags in here. Maybe if we're going to go on this kind of tempo-y plan, play, Seeker of the Way, that great uncommon from Khans of Tarkir that was a 2/2 with Prowess, and when you cast an on-creature spell, it got lifelink. Maybe that's the way to go with this, but I don't understand what's going on here. 4 of Painful Truth. I mean, I guess it's how you offset the damage dealt to yourself. The Glorybound Initiate is how you offset Painful Truths. I don't know, but this deck is just weird to me. And I mean, obviously it did well. It made the top 8 of a Grand Prix, but like I said, something's in the water in Kobe, and frankly, I want a taste of it. because of the last deck I want to talk about today. And like I said, we're going to be a shorter episode today, so I apologize if you guys are expecting the full, hour shebang. That'll be next week. I'm sure something's going to happen. In the hands of Ryoichi Tamada, who is, I believe, a gold or platinum level pro. We have another blue-white X by MTG Top 8's account, but this is a Jeskai counter burn deck. And if you're not familiar with the counter burn term, it is essentially a tempo deck, but it has a very straightforward game plan, and we'll get to that here in just a second. But let's check out the mana base. 4 Celestial Colonnade. Makes sense. 4 Flooded Strand, 2 Hollowed Fountain, 2 Island, 1 Mountain, 1 Plains, 1 Sacred Foundry, 4 Scalding Tarn, 4 Spire Bluff Canal. I love that we're getting to see the Kaladesh fast lands, the ones that come into play untapped if you control 3 or less lands. Getting to see play in Modern, also a single Steam Vent. 4 Snapcaster Mage, 4 Spell Queller in the main board. I've been seeing every once in a while Jeskai Flash kind of picking up in popularity here and playing Spell Queller and Restoration Angel, but I like just the lean creature package here. The Snapcasters and the Spell Quellers. Vendilion Clicks on the sideboard as another flash threat, but then we have 4 Cryptic Command, 4 Electrolyze, 4 Lightning Bolt, 4 Lightning Helix, 4 Logic Knot. I love this card. 4 Path to Exile, 4 Serum Visions. 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. Probably the easiest deck list to ever write out, other than the Mono Blue Devotion deck I won my first IQ with. 4's all the way down. I love it. We got Jason Balerion in the sideboard. How cool is that? We got Grim Lavamancer up in here. Ceremonial Rejection. Oh my gosh. Ryoichi, man, you got it, bro. You know how to, him and Jonathan Sukenik just know how to build a deck that just goes, hey, Alex, play us this weekend at your local game store. Go win it. Go win, some store credit. Man, I love decks like this. But now let's, aside from the coolness of the decks and the uniqueness and sort of the out there thinking, Collected Company in an affinity deck, if you're out there and you have any idea, if Takashi Kagawa reads this or listens to this, please talk to me. I'm so curious as to know. I'm going to tweet at him, actually. I'm going to find out, if I can find him on Twitter, what his explanation is of Collected Company and Affinity, and I hope I hear back from him, and I can let you guys know next week, because I'm dying to know. Same with Akio Chiba and his Glorybound Initiates. I've got to know. I have a passion for learning now. It has been re-sparked, and I want to find out. But there is a lesson to be learned here, I think, and it really kind of shows you the difference between an American metagame at large, the European metagame, and also the Asia Pac area metagame. It's different everywhere you go, and I think that's great. In Texas, where I moved from, just a couple months ago, any major tournament, especially SEG Opens, you walk in and one thing is there: a whole lot of burn and lantern control. That's beside the point. But and it just speaks to the fact that knowing your shop, knowing your area, knowing the metagame, walking in and saying, I've got a beat on everybody in here because I've been paying attention to the past couple weeks of results, and I'm ready. Like right now, my local game store right now is infested with Death Shadow decks. And I'm like, all right, cool, I know how to beat you guys. Condemns and Busted Alliances. Got you good. Having that advantage, being able to read the metagame, just makes you that much better of a player. And maybe that's what Joe So did with his Eldrazi Black-White mid-range deck. Maybe that was the killer thing that he brought. It was that no one was expecting it. This grindy Black-White mid-range deck that just happened to play Eldrazi Smashers and Thought-Knot Seers. Cool, I guess. But it just goes to show that when you can be a little bit more creative, don't feel like you have to be constrained to, the deck of the moment, just because everyone's playing Death Shadow doesn't mean you have to be able to play Death Shadow 2 or Dredge or Storm or whatever it's going to be. Figure out what works for you, master it, and win with it. And I think that's a great message, seeing results from literally around the world, Baltimore to Copenhagen to Kobe. I think that's awesome to see just how different the metagames are. Obviously we have the usual players with Dredge, Eldrazi, Tron, and Nazi, things like that, but you get those shining spots, those shining moments of, I think, pure deck building creativity and forward thinkingness, and I think we need that a lot more in the game right now. Standard is a great example of that, just being horribly stagnant with the oppression of Aetherworks Marvel. You know, we've talked about this before already. Was it a mistake? Maybe. Is it too good for standard? Maybe. That was last week's episode. Go check it out. But it just goes to show that it doesn't have to be the same always, and it just takes a couple of people here and there to really show off what they're made of. You know, sometimes you do have to sleeve up a full 4 of everything in your deck, and that's fine. So that's what it takes, fine. But if you're playing 4 Logic Knot, awesome. I love Logic Knot. I remember I was playing a 4-color control like that I saw online somewhere at a local FNM back in Texas, and my opponent looks at my mana, and it's like literally a smattering of shock lands and crystal colonnades of every color but green in Magic, and he's looking at 2 untapped lands, and they can both produce blue mana, and he's got a zillion mana untapped too. He's like, and he looks at me just like for a good minute. He's like, "What does Logic Knot do again?" And I'm just like, "I don't know." And he gets an Oracle checks of me. He's like, "How many cards are in your graveyard?" And I'm like, 17. He's like, "Pass." I'm just sitting there thumbing the Logic Knot in my hand. I was like, this guy's got the read, but I got him the whole time. Little story right there for you guys. But yeah, like I'm saying, guys, you know, it doesn't have to always be the same old rock and roll. You can be a little jazzy, change up the tempo, change up your game plan, keep people on their heels, and translate into a GP top 8 or heck, even a GP win. So I think this is really cool. That's it for tonight's show, guys. I appreciate everybody watching, of course. I've been doing a lot more work on my movie reviews over on the YouTube channel, so please go check those out. I've been getting a lot of really great feedback, all of a sudden out of nowhere, just random comments from people across the country, the world. Actually, I can track the analytics through YouTube's video manager, and I'm getting hits from Europe, Australia. I think there was one in South Africa too. So if you're out there, thank you for watching me ramble on about DC movies. So please go check those out, guys. I'm having a really good time doing those. Of course, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on anything over here. Check us out over on the MTG Cast for the audio-only versions of all the podcasts that we've done recently. All 73 episodes so far, inching closer to that 100 mark, and that's going to be a great day. Of course, you can check us out over on Facebook. Just look for the EOT Newsflash. Check us out on Twitter at EOT Newsflash. Send all love, hate, and respect to EOTNewsflash@gmail.com. And of course, check us out here on YouTube. Just look for the EOT Newsflash. You see the lightning bolt on the card. Boom. Now, next week, surely something's going to happen. I really hope so, because it's gotten a little too quiet as far as Magic news goes. So, since Steven's not here, I'm going to say it for you guys. Let's do it again next week. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good night.